Hi, everybody. Welcome. Buongiorno a tutti. How are you all doing today? Excellent. My name is Nina Bernardo, and I'm going to be teaching today's Test Drive a Tour Guide class on Sicily and the south of Italy. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, but in 1996, I decided I wanted to move to Italy to have a one-year adventure abroad. And apparently I can't count very well because 20 years later, I'm still there. I've lived in quite a few places in Italy, in the north, in the south, in small towns, and in big cities. And for the last 13 years, I've been a guide for Rick Steves. So I spend about 5 months a year traveling up and down the peninsula, sharing the love of my adopted home with all kinds of travelers like you. I am thrilled to have on stage with me today two of my friends and colleagues. This is Virginia Agostinelli and Tommaso Pante. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves?
Buongiorno, everyone. My name is Virginia. I'm from Abruzzo, which is a small region in the central part of Italy, just 2 hours east of Rome.
Buongiorno a tutti, my name is Tommaso, and I'm from Sicily. Yeah, I'm from the southern part of Italy, and thank you. And yes, and this is actually from the northernest part of Sicily, between Taormina and the Aeolian Islands. So this is the area where I come from.
We just have a few housekeeping kind of tips to go through before we get into the good stuff. So I just want to remind everyone that today's the biggest day of the year at Rick Steves Europe for us. We've got about 2,000 2016 tour alums in town, and they are attending reunion parties and sharing their memories with all of their tour buddies. We've got 20 Test Drive a Tour Guide classes going on in various venues around here where we are up on stage educating and inspiring you to travel to Europe, we hope very soon. We've also wanted to remind you that if you sign up for a tour today or by Sunday, January 22nd, you get a $100 discount on whatever tour you want to sign up for. You can use the promo code that's on your flyer, and if you're watching online, there's a promo code as well that you can use. And today only in our travel store, which is just down the street, we're offering 20% off on any travel gear that you might be interested in. I want to remind you as well that when this talk is over at 12:45, we're going to go out to the lobby, and we're going to be there with a handful of other guides just to answer any specific questions you might have about this tour. And if you want to sign up today, there'll be a lot of staff around. Anybody with a name tag can help you get anywhere you need to go today. And then one last thing, if you want to end your day with a laugh, at 7 o'clock, if you want to come back into this theater, Rick is going to be on stage giving his irreverent history of Rick Steves Europe. And that kind of starts with the legendary origins of the company when Rick was guiding every tour and taking only a handful of TMs in a minivan all around Europe with not a single hotel reservation. So I don't want you to panic. We book ahead now, so don't worry too much about that. But we are here today because we want to share with you our love for maybe a lesser-known part of Italy. You're here today because you're interested in Italy, right? Who wouldn't be? You are spoiled for choice in terms of destination in this country. It has an incredibly rich and diverse history, and there's a lot to choose from. But we have a particular love for what the Italians call il mezzogiorno, or the southern half of the boot. We are very excited about our 2017 tour itineraries. That's a cover of our catalog where you can find all kinds of information about the tour, specific details. If you want, you can go on the website. That's also a wealth of information for you. You can find radio and TV archives. You can go onto the Travelers Forum where you can exchange tips with other Rick Steves travelers. And if you want to connect with us on social media and find out where's Rick, you can follow the Rick Steves Facebook page. I think before we get started, though, one of the things that we really want to stress is what sets a Rick Steves tour apart from all the other tour companies out there. How many of you in the audience are tour alums? How many of you have taken, wow, All of this will sound incredibly familiar to you. For the one or two newbies out there, this is what we think is really important about a Rick Steves tour. One, we like small groups with fun-loving and curious travelers. Two, we sell our tours ethically. That means there are no hidden costs. All your sightseeing is going to be included, and you never have to feel anxious about tipping anyone because all of your tips are going to be included as well, not even for the driver or the guide. But I think the most important thing that sets us apart is that we have a real emphasis on learning. We want to make this experience educational and authentic. We want it to be a cultural immersion for you so that you can broaden your perspectives and remind ourselves about how connected we all really are. So how do we get that done? Rick has spent a long time assembling this very talented group of guides, and every January he flies all of us out here, and we descend on the little town of Edmonds, and we spend an entire week sharing ideas and brainstorming with the office staff to try to tweak our itineraries and make them the best possible experience for you. Just a reminder, $100 off if you want to sign up, and that is by January 22nd. So let's get into our first itinerary. This is the south of Italy, and this is 13 days long. And you can see from the map that we start in Rome, and you see the little number under there, it says 2. So we spend 2 nights in Rome. We go across the peninsula to the Spur of the Boot and spend 2 nights on the Gargano Peninsula. We head down south to the instep and spend 2 nights in Matera, go back to the Tyrrhenian side and spend 4 nights on the Amalfi coast, 2 in Positano and 2 in Sorrento, and then we end with 2 nights in Naples. So we bookend this tour with 2 of my absolute favorite cities in all of Italy. Rome is my home. I've lived there for 8 years now, but I also spent 4 years living in Napoli, so we'll talk more about that when we get there. We start out in Rome in what I like to call Village Rome. So this is a neighborhood that we spend a lot of time in. It's called Trastevere. It means across the Tiber River. What do you guys love about Trastevere?
Trastevere is a very bubbly neighborhood. It does feel like a village, you're right, Nina. There are lots of students, lots of Roman kids, lots of little restaurants, little craftsman shop, and it does feel like a little small village within the bigger city.
After our orientation on the first night, we like to get right into the culinary experience. Food is going to be a huge part of your experience in Italy. So we share a meal together and start introducing you to the regional specialties here. And then the next day, we focus on something a little more specific with one of our local guides. And that's another thing that's really great about a Rick Steves tour is that we really like to use top-notch local guides to give you that incredible in-depth expertise. Tommaso, who are we with here?
This is the Capitoline Museum in Rome. Well, it's one of the most beautiful museums we have in Rome. Actually, when we think about Rome, we think about the Vatican Museum or the Galleria Borghese. But this is one which should be on top of your list because, you know, it's beautiful, the art, and the piece of archaeology that we have inside. So if you want to know more about the Roman culture and the Roman Empire, this should be one of the most important places that should be, in your list.
And we're going to finish off our morning. That was Francesca, one of our favorite local guides in that last. Yeah, you can clap for Francesca. Go on. We're going to finish off our morning with a walk through the Jewish ghetto, which is today a very charming area of Rome. But what we're going to do is dig deep and learn about the very complex history that the Jewish population lived through. And that's one of the longest Jewish populations outside of Israel in Europe. So they were in Rome from the 2nd century BC. The next day, we're going to board our bus, and this is another thing that sets us apart from a lot of other tour companies. You see that bus, it's probably about 50 people, but our group size is half that. So you're going to have plenty of room to spread out and relax on the bus. And our first stop that day is going to be Hadrian's villa. Hadrian is, I think, my favorite Roman emperor. He had a great interest and love of travel, and he built his villa. I don't want you to think house. I want you to think city complex outside of Rome. And I find it to be one of the most evocative classical sites in all of Italy. What's it like to wander through Hadrian's villa?
Well, Hadrian's villa, yes, as you said, when we think about villa, we think about a small house. No, no, no. This is absolutely a huge, a big archaeological complex. When this smart emperor decided to build this complex because he wanted to move from the chaotic Rome into the countryside, so he made this wonderful, this wonderful place with lovely lakes, little fountains. We have inside. We have beautiful buildings, a theater. Remember, Hadrian was, the wonder of the world in those days because he had the interest in the art, in the culture. So he was really a great, great man. One of the most important, emperor we had in the Roman Empire.
And today, I think, after we leave Hadrian's Villa, we're going to take absolutely one of the prettiest drives on this whole tour. So we're going to cross through the Apennine Mountains and drive through 2 of the 20 regions of Italy, Abruzzo and Molise. Yeah, I give a shout out to Virginia. We're driving through what Virginia and I consider the motherland. You want to tell them why?
Yes. So Abruzzo and Molise, which is just south of that, Nina's families is originally from Molise, but they used to be one single region, and then they split during the 70s. So I still tease Nina by saying that she is Abruzzese too.
We are considered paesani from the same village. Our destination that day is going to be the whitewashed seaside village of Vieste, and this sits right on the spur of the Boot in the Gargano Peninsula. And this is some really, really pretty coastline on the Adriatic side. So a lot of Northern Europeans have discovered this coastline, but it's a little bit new to a lot of North Americans. So it's going to feel really, really backdoor to a lot of people. And usually when we arrive, these guys are waiting for us. So we've gotten off the bus, and we're making our way through the old town to our hotel, and usually a group of guys is sitting in the main square in the main piazza waiting to welcome us into their town. And we make our way through the old town, through these beautiful kind of limestone paved streets. And our first destination is our hotel. And this is another thing that really distinguishes us from other companies, is we like centrally located, quirky, family-run hotels. So this hotel is run by the patriarch Giuseppe, and his son and daughter and son-in-law are going to be there to greet us. And we like to develop relationships with all of our vendors. So we've been coming here for years. So it's like coming home when they come here. And they welcome every group as if we were a family coming back every time. Northern Europeans come down here to take advantage of the long sandy beaches. We come down here to take advantage of the boat and the beautiful coastline. So what are we going to do when we're in Vieste besides hang out with the old guys in the village square?
Yes, I mean, it's a beautiful, what we're going to do this extra beautiful activity, which is, yes, the visit of all the caves, because we have a beautiful caves where we go inside with the boat, okay, and we discover what, especially the geology in this case, because remember, from one geological point of view, this is considered one of the oldest part of Europe in terms of geological formation. So you're going to see a lot of crystals, of stones full size.
And what's that funny-looking thing?
Oh, that is a trabuco. Trabuco is a way of fishing that was used until 1960s, 1970s, more or less. And this is the old way how the fishermen, they catch the fish into the ocean. So they put a net, into the water, the fish went inside, and then they took out the net, and inside we had the fish. So we see also during our navigation, during our exploration of the coastline, some of these trabucos.
And then after you've worked up an appetite, we've been on the boat, the salty sea air is going to make you a little bit hungry. So we're going to go back to the hotel, and we're going to meet our friends Nicola and Giovanni. They're the chefs there, and they're going to teach us how to make a lot of Pulian-shaped pasta. So maybe some pasta shapes that you're not really familiar with. Our favorite is orecchiette with cime di rapa. And of course, you're not going to make it without eating it. So we're going to put you into a lovely food coma. and then you're going to have an afternoon free to maybe take a siesta and do what you should properly do in a southern Italian small town. The next day we're going to get up and we're going to drive down into the region of Puglia, and we're going to see these funny shaped houses. It almost looks like a fairyland, doesn't it? These are trullis, and they are conical shaped houses with these conical shaped roofs, and we're going to learn all about their construction, why you find such a high concentration of them in this area. And after that, we're going to go meet our friend Gino. And Gino is a sommelier, and he has a great passion for Pulian wine and Pulian food.
Yes, this is part of our tour. I mean, not only monuments, not only cities, coastlines, but also food. In this case, Puglia food is really amazing because, you know, we taste in this kind of lunch, because it's a lunch after all, cheese, mozzarella cheese, and then the pizza. Pizza actually is made from Gino's mama. Gino's the mom of Gino. We make the pizza for us in the morning, and then we eat the pizza. And how not to mention the olive oil. Look, the olive oil, the sun-dried tomatoes, the fava beans. I mean, this is really a festival. This is a celebration of the Puglian food.
Gino's mom does actually make that focaccia for us, and she often shows up at the wine tastings. Now, Gino is very capable of running a wine tasting and taking care of our groups, but she likes to arrive and just keep him in check and make sure he's doing a good job. So, after that, we're going to go to what I think is the most interesting stop on this entire tour, and this is the town of Matera. It is possibly Italy's oldest city. They've had evidence of continuous human inhabitation here since the Neolithic times. And that's when people were living in the natural caves on one side of the ravine. And then later on, they moved to the other side of the ravine, and they started carving out their dwellings and using that material to make built-up facades. If you can believe it, people lived in these cave-like dwellings up until the 1950s. But that means they were living there without running water and a proper sanitation system. And there was a Jewish intellectual from the north of Italy who wrote a very famous book called Christ Stopped at Eboli. Maybe some of you are familiar with it. And when this was brought to the attention of the national government, Matera was called the shame of Italy because of these unhealthy living conditions. And 30,000 people were forced out of the city into new housing. And for decades, the city was abandoned. But fast forward 30 years, and now the city has been completely renovated. And in 2019, it's no longer the shame of Italy, but it's the European capital of culture. So we're going to explore this with a local guide who's going to tell us all of the stories of the people who lived here. We'll be able to go into a home that was left by a family in the 1960s and hear their story as well. And we are actually going to stay in a cave hotel. So I said we like quirky, right? Don't think too rustic. It's going to be kind of wonky on the inside. But what's the best part of this hotel?
Oh, best part of the hotel is the water cistern that was transformed into a swimming pool, a spa. We have a spa, thermal baths. Huh? Look at the beautiful color. So it's a very comfortable cave, believe me. Huh? It's a very comfortable one.
After we leave the region of Basilicata, we're going to take another beautiful drive through the mountains and go back to the Tyrrhenian coast. And this time we're going to stop at a buffalo mozzarella farm. So did you guys know that there have been Asian water buffalo in Italy for at least 1,000 years? And this is the center of the best production of buffalo milk mozzarella. So we're going to stop at this farm called Vanullo, and we chose them because they are organic and high-tech, and they treat their buffaloes really well. I don't know if you can see in the middle of that photograph, there are some massage brushes in there. That's so the buffalo can get up there when they want to and get a little neck rub if they're feeling kind of stressed out. They have low lighting and classical music playing for them in the morning because they believe that makes the mozzarella taste a bit better. We get to go into the stables, meet and greet the buffalo. And do you really think we're going to go here without tasting the fresh cheese? I'm here to tell you that when you come and taste this mozzarella di bufala and this fresh ricotta made with buffalo milk, you will be spoiled for any other mozzarella that you will ever have in your life again. So That's the only downside to going there, I think. We have a feast at this place. We end our meal with yogurt made with buffalo milk. They make gelato with buffalo milk. No cow milk allowed on this farm. And after you're in another one of your many food comas, we're going to go over to this amazing archaeological site. This is the Greek site of Paestum. We're going to have a group nap on the sacrificial altar. And after about 10 minutes, we're going to wake up and we're going to explore this site. What do we know about the Greeks? I love talking about the Greeks in the south of Italy.
Greeks. I mean, remember, this was part of Magna Grecia, the greater Greece. I mean, probably this part of Italy was much more powerful than Greece itself in those days. We can see this triumph from the beautiful temples we have there. Among the most well-preserved Greek temples we have all over the world. We're going back to 2,500 years ago. Those temples still standing. Those temples, they look like they were built probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, 100 years ago. They're still in perfect condition.
One of the things I love about going to Paestum right now is that last year, or a couple of years ago, after an international call for applicants, the Ministry of Heritage in Italy decided to shake things up a bit, and they hired 20 new super directors of museums and archaeological sites to try to do a few maybe more innovative things. And so one of the things that you can do now in Paestum is actually walk through the temple. So it's really a different experience to walk through there after you've heard about the construction of the temples and the statues that once were in there. And then after that, we're going to go off to the coast to, I think, probably the most famous coastline for North Americans in Italy, and that's the Amalfi Coast. And there's a reason it's the most famous. It's the most dramatic. And people have been waxing on about this coastline for millennium. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the story of Ulysses in the Odyssey, right? And when Homer describes the sirens singing their song and how they're going to tempt Ulysses and he's never going to go back, maybe what he's really trying to say is how seductive this coastline was to those early Greek adventurous sailors who were going, and maybe we're never going to leave and go back. There are about 20 towns that dot the coastline in the Amalfi Coast, and our first destination is going to be Positano. And Positano has these beautiful pastel-colored homes that just kind of cascade down. It's tucked into the crevice of a mountain, and we are right in the middle of things. So our hotel is right at the bottom, just before the pedestrian area. So we're going to take you down to the beach and orient you here, and then we're going to talk to you about what you might want to do because you have an entire free day to explore the Amalfi Coast.
Well, that is the
You need
vacation.
more than a day.
Oh, your vacation, yeah. Because when you are in Positano, you really want to you want to experience the dolce vita, no? The sweet life, or the dolce far niente, the sweet do nothing. This is what really, sweet do nothing. I mean, it's typical Southern Italian. And in Positano, we have the top expression of it. Positano is so beautiful. I mean, once you are there, it's very nice to walk by the water, to walk, by in the town, and really enjoy this typical Southern Italian atmosphere that probably you don't find in any other place in the northern part of Italy. I mean, we are very relaxed. Remember, we have the longest siesta of the world, I would say, and that's part of the dolce vita.
And if you didn't want to just spend all day lounging on the beach, you could also take a boat over to Amalfi town, and they have an amazing cathedral there that you can see. They have an interesting paper museum where you can see an industry that's been important there for centuries, where they're still making paper the way they did many centuries ago. If you wanted to, you really could do exactly as Tommaso said. Get a lounge chair, get an umbrella, grab a book, maybe write a few postcards, and do like the Italians do when they go to the beach. They lie on their chair, they sunbathe, they all turn over at the same time, they all leave for lunch at the same time and then come back. After we leave Positano, our next stop is Sorrento. And as soon as we get it in, we're going to hit the ground running, and we're going to meet our friend Mario. And Mario is a master gelato maker. So he's going to reveal all the secrets of why Italian gelato is so much better than American ice cream. Virginia, you have tons of experience with Italian gelato, right?
Yes, so Italian gelato is truly different than ice cream. One of the main differences is the fat content, because gelato is made with milk and a little bit of cream, and ice cream is made with cream and a little bit of butter, so fat content. And then the air content is different as well. There is less air in gelato once they churl the gelato into the churling machine, which means that you can serve it with a spatula. There is more substance, whereas the ice cream has to be kept frozen. And what I'm saying here is that you can have 3 gelatos instead of 1 ice cream every day.
What more reason do you need? Of course, we're going to help Mario make a couple of flavors, and then we're going to try some of his gelato. And then we're going to go over to one of the most important archaeological sites on the coast, and that is Pompei. So Pompei, 2,000 years ago, was a cosmopolitan, bustling commercial town, and its life was abruptly cut short when Vesuvius erupted and buried it under 20 feet of volcanic ash. And for centuries, it was forgotten. People didn't even know that it existed anymore. And then accidentally, there's a farmer plowing in a field, and oops, looks like something's peeping out of there, and the excavations begin. So we're going to tour Pompeii with our local guide, Gaetano, and he is going to absolutely make this place come to life for you again. So we're going to visit typical homes, private homes. We're going to visit public buildings. We're going to see where the public baths were. We're going to go over to where the wine bars and the snack bars were. And then we're going to go over to the red light district if the lines aren't too long, because that's usually the most crowded place in town. After we visit Pompeii, we're going to go back to Sorrento, and then you're going to have an evening to just explore on your own. And this photo we have here is of Marina Grande. This continues our village kind of feel to this tour, I think, because Marina Grande is where all the little boats are, and it feels kind of like a little village inside of a bigger town. And they have beautiful little seaside restaurants there, and you can sit and have a wonderful meal on the seaside. Next day, you have a whole day free again. And this time, what people like to really do is go over to the island of Capri. And that's the most famous of the 3 islands in the Bay of Naples. My favorite thing to do in Capri is to take the chairlift up to Monte Solare. And that's the highest peak on the island. And if you do, then you are rewarded with a sweeping view of the Bay of Naples. There are quite a few other things, though, you could do on Capri, I think. That's my favorite thing to do. I think, Tommaso, you maybe prefer to do some other things.
Well, Monte Solaro for sure. This is for me, yes, one of the highlights of the island, because once you get there, you have a 360 degrees view of all the archipelago, Capri, and everything. In Anacapri, because Monte Solaro and the chairlift is in Anacapri, there is also a beautiful villa that belonged to a Swedish, person, very important person. That today that villa is a museum. It's very interesting also the view and how life was in Capri in the early 1900s. In the early 1900s, this was really a piece of paradise on earth.
This is an island that has been attracting emperors and artists and aristocrats for millennia. So we have this beautiful villa that you can explore. There are also the remains of the Roman Emperor Tiberius's villa here. It is absolutely the poshest, most shishi island, and definitely worth a trip out there. When we get back that night, we're going to do something that we try to do a lot of on all of our itineraries, and that's have as many experiences as you can with local people. So we have a home-hosted meal set up for you with our friends Teresa and Luigi. And look at that table. It looks like Sunday lunch with a big Italian family, except we're the Italian family having lunch with them. And Teresa has been working all day in her kitchen setting up for us, and this is usually a highlight meal for everybody. People are often asked, what was your favorite meal of the trip? And nobody remembers the shishi meal they had in a restaurant, but everybody remembers the specialties that Teresa and Luigi cooked up for us. And that probably has a lot to do with the fact that they're a great family, and they sit around and they chat with us, and it's a really nice experience. And after that, we go off to Napoli. And I said to you that I lived for 4 very happy years in Napoli, and I loved its geographical position. It sits on this gorgeous curve of the Bay of Naples, and you've got this dramatic Vesuvius in the background. And you get into the city, and for me, Napoli is the most vibrant city in all of Italy. It's got a tangible energy to it. And we get started at the Museum of Capodimonte. Arguably, outside of the Uffizi Gallery, the most important painting gallery in all of Italy. This building, though, was not originally meant to be a museum.
No, this was the royal palace. Was the palace where the king and the queen of the southern part of Italy, of the kingdom of the Sicily, used to live. And all around this building, we have a wonderful, wonderful garden. It's beautiful, where many, many Neapolitan go for jogging, to run. So it's really, a green area. One of the most important, I would say, green area of the city of Naples.
Inside, we're going to see masterpieces like my favorite of the 17th century painters, Caravaggio. And I love him because I associate him so much with the vibrancy and the energy of Napoli. He is a really gritty painter who has a hyper sense of realism and drama in his paintings. And I can talk to you all about it, and you can say, oh yeah, looks interesting from where you're sitting looking at my slide, or maybe looking at it in a book. But I can tell you that that experience is very different and much more powerful when you're standing in front of it and listening to a scholar explain to you the story of it and why it's important. And isn't that one of the reasons that we travel, in order to have those experiences and create those memories? We're going to walk through the apartments of the royal palace as well, so you can imagine the opulence, the wealth that this Bourbon dynasty had accumulated. Tommaso said this was one of the 4 royal palaces. This is the ballroom. Imagine being invited there to a ball in the 1800s in your best dress, and the music is playing for you. And then, are you going to go to Naples without eating a pizza? It's the birthplace of pizza. Why is it the birthplace of pizza?
So the name of the Margherita pizza was invented in Naples in honor of Queen Margherita, who was the Queen of Italy. Italy was a monarchy until the Second World War. And it has the color of the Italian flag, red of the tomato, white of the mozzarella, and green of the basil on it.
We're going to cap off our visit here with a visit to the Archaeological Museum. And this is where all the treasures of Pompei and Herculaneum and all of the amazing villas that lined that coastline between Naples and Pompeii were taken after they were excavated. So we'll see mosaics, bronze statues, marble statues, and again, we'll have one of our favorite local scholars taking us around and making those come to life for us. Then you're going to have some free time to explore on your own. And you might think about going down to this 13th century castle that's down by the modern port, where interestingly, they were building a subway station. It's taken them about 20 years to build it, but that's because underneath they found the remains of a Greek and Roman port. So you have to think about Napoli in the same way that you might think about Rome, with lots of different layers underneath. We're talking about almost 3,000 years of history here. Or maybe you want to go explore some of the churches in town. This is the Church of Gesù Nuovo. Doesn't look like much from the outside, I know. Once you get inside, then it's what I call Baroque on steroids. And this absolutely reflects the Neapolitan character. Over the top, theatric, dramatical. My favorite is bombastic to describe the church and the people. They have a really interesting side chapel in here. Can you see those kind of silver plaques on there? I don't know if you can make it out, but they're in the shape of funny little body parts.
Oh, yes, we have a piece of legs, we have eyes, we have hearts, we have, legs also. These are called ex voto. Ex voto means that, some people probably they were sick or they were healed in something, they went to the Virgin Mary, to Jesus Christ, they asked for a miracle, they received the miracle, and then they went back with this piece of ex votus in silver. So it's a kind of, to say, thank you, Virgin Mary, Jesus Christ, I got, the miracle from you, and this is how I want to say thank you to you.
And then we always end our tours with a farewell dinner so that we can toast our friends and say arrivederci together. And then after this, if South Italy isn't quite enough for you, you might want to tack on Sicily as well. You might as well. You're already in the southern half of the boot. We have two Sicily itineraries, an off-season and a regular season. They're both 11 days long, and there's one stop that's different between the two. So as we go through the itinerary, I'll make sure to mention which one that is. But I want to get started and just tell you that we start in the northwestern coast of the island, and that is Palermo. If you close your eyes for just 10 seconds and imagine where Sicily is in the Mediterranean, then you will realize its incredibly strategic position, and that this has been a crossroads with people moving from Africa to Europe and Asia for millennia. So already with the Greek colonization almost 3,000 years ago, this has been a very multicultural society. Over 12 dominations in Sicily. And each of those groups of people have left their mark on the art, the architecture, the food, the wine, and the language. So peeling back these layers and understanding this harmonious mix that's been put together is one of the beautiful things about discovering this island. So we start in the northwest corner of Palermo, and this corner was never really touched by the Greeks because this was kind of a Carthaginian stronghold, and later it was, under the Arab domination, an Arab capital. After the Arabs, the Normans came through. When they came through, they very wisely kept all of the people employed who knew how to do the things that they needed done. So when they wanted to build their Christian churches, they used Arab craftsmen. So what you have is this blending of styles that have come together called Arab Norman style that's unique to this corner of the island. We get started on the first night with a visit to my favorite palazzo in the whole city. This is Palazzo Conte di Federica, and that is actually the Contessa who is taking us on a walk through her private home. What can we say about Alvine? She's so lovely.
Yes, she married into the Famiglia Federico, and they're direct descendants of Frederick II, the Red Bear. And if you look at the house and you look through the doors, you see that it kind of leans a little bit because the house, it's actually built on top of the ancient wall of the city of Palermo, which was a privilege given to the nobility. If you were able to build your house on top of the city walls, you wouldn't pay property tax.
Sounds like a sweet deal. Palermo is also home to Europe's third largest opera house, some of your first examples of Sicilian Baroque architecture, and also the first time that we will meet that Arab Norman style of architecture in their main cathedral. We spend time here with a local expert as well, and so that's Jackie taking us through the Ballaro market. I think markets in Sicily are really different than markets in the north of Italy. I much prefer the ones down south.
Well, our markets, are very Arabic, I would say. When you are in a Sicilian market, it looks like you are in a souk in Morocco or in Tunisia because of the colors, because of the spices. And all the produce and agriculture produce you see in the market, this is all made in Sicily. We don't import anything except bananas or pineapples. That's it. So you can see there some eggplants or long zucchini and bell peppers. So it's all Sicilians.
And then we're going to go up to the town of Monreale, and we're going to explore this beautiful cathedral together where we can see these wonderful mosaics that cover almost the entire interior of this church. And you have to think of these stories as like a picture Bible for the masses, so just reinforcing that oral tradition of stories that has been passed down for them. We'll have a chance to explore the cloister as well, a really peaceful area where we can look more clearly at all of the columns there. No two columns are alike in that cloister. And then we're going to leave Palermo and head over to Segesta. I love going up to Segesta just for its beautiful position.
Yes, we mentioned earlier too about the temples, the ancient Greek temples, but in this case, we're actually in Elymian territory. The Elymians were the native inhabitant of the island, and this temple, we don't know exactly when it was built, but likely the 5th century before Christ, maybe to celebrate a Greek ambassador visiting Elymian territory.
Can you imagine that? The ambassador's coming, let's build a temple. We're also going to get our first look at a theater. And the Greeks always built their theaters into the hillside, so we'll have a chance to sit in the seats and imagine listening to one of the dramas or the tragedies or the comedies being played out with a beautiful view of the sea as your backdrop. And after that, we're going to go up to the pristine medieval hilltop town called Erice, which is home to our friend Maria Grammatico. She's the most famous pastry chef on the island. Everybody knows who she is, and everyone is dying to taste her pastries. And she's got a really interesting story.
Yes, she does. She has been making almond pastry since she was very young. She literally started with a fistful of almonds and a little bit of sugar, and she learned in a monastery where she grew up. And she was telling us how the nuns were very jealous when she opened the shop because her pastries were tasting much better than the ones that they were making, and so they wouldn't even loan her the mold to make the cookies.
And she was 11 when she went into the convent, right?
Yes.
And then in her 20s when she came out.
Right, she opened a shop, and that was very common at the time in Italy because family that had a lot of kids, but they didn't have the means to feed the kid, would just give them out to the various monasteries in the area so that they could learn an art or to become a tailor or a cook and grow up inside the monastery.
How shocking for a woman to do it on her own, too.
Yes.
Yeah, fantastic. So we're going to spend some time with her, and then you're going to have a little bit of a chance to wander through Erice as well. And maybe you might think about taking a walk over to the ruins of a temple that was famous in the Mediterranean in ancient times to get a view. Or maybe you just might want to pick a quiet little square and sit and have a cappuccino or a glass of wine and think about the experiences that you've just had. And then we're going to get back on the bus, and we're going to drive down to our home, which is going to be Trapani, for the next 2 nights. Trapani is fascinating because right off the coast of Trapani, you can see the Egadi Islands, and so much is going on in the Egadi Islands. A lot of people come here in the summertime. It's a jumping-off point to get there. But the Egadi Islands are famous for food in Sicily.
They are famous for food. Actually, this is one of the most important area of the Mediterranean for tuna fish, red tuna. You know, and we have actually in the Egadi Islands, we had in the past, but we have some little tonnaras. So this kind of factory where we put tuna in cans. And yes, Trapani and the Egadi Islands are actually a part of the minor islands of Sicily, because remember in Sicily we have a lot of minor islands. Egadis are located to the western point, and then we have the Aeolian Islands, the islands of Stromboli, Lipari, volcanic islands to the northeast, and then south of Sicily, much closer than Africa than to Sicily, I would say, we have the Pelagie Islands, the island of Pantelleria and Linosa.
And this is also another chance for us to see some beautiful Sicilian Baroque architecture. But what really interests me on this building are the flags that are on this building. If you notice that Virginia and Tommaso are up here, and Virginia has the Italian flag on her badge, but Tommaso does not. So what are we looking at? Because you can see it on the building too, right?
That is, in fact, the Sicilian flag, the one that Tommaso is wearing. It's red and yellow, as you can see. And then in the center, there is a symbol, the symbol of Sicily called the Trinacria, which is the head of the Gorgon Medusa. But instead of having snakes for hair, she has grain as a symbol of fertility of the island. And the 3 legs stands for the 3 corners of Sicily, which is triangularly shaped.
So I think we said before that Italy is made up of 20 regions. And because Italy was unified only about 150 years ago, the regional identities are still very strong. So you can imagine for Sicily, even stronger being an island. And it occurred to me a few years ago how separate they felt from the rest of Italy when I called the bus company to find out who my driver was going to be for the South Italy tour. And I called and I said, oh, who is it going to be? And they said, well, it's going to be so-and-so. And I thought, well, that driver doesn't normally drive for that tour. That's odd. So I specified the starting point of the tour, and they said, oh, you mean the northern Italian tour. So for them, the tour that starts in Rome and ends in Naples is the north of Italy. So we're going to use Trapani as a base to explore the island of Mozia and the salt pans here. So salt has been a commodity and an important natural resource here for millennia. If you remember anything about the Punic Wars, this is the reason that the Romans are coming down here and they're interested in this area. You have to think about salt as the oil of the ancient time. So we're going to learn all about the process of harvesting, and we're going to take a boat out into a lagoon. The harvesting of the salt is beautiful just because of the piles that they create and how they do it.
Yes, when on this day on the tour we do two very interesting things. One, as you said, we learn about harvesting salt, but also we visit an island called Mozia, and it's one of the only stop actually on tour where we talk about the Phoenician. My favorite thing on this tour is just we're on the chairs and the table that you showed right before. We generally stop there to have a really nice lunch and to have some pasta, which is typical of that area of Trapani, called busiati pasta. It's kind of like a long fettuccine, but curly, and with a pesto, which is not the pesto you have in mind, but it's a Trapanese pesto, a little bit more garlicky, but just delicious.
And then after we've spent time there, we go back to Trapani, and then you have an evening free to explore the town. And I just think that this is a beautiful location on the island of Sicily. So you might think about taking a walk at sunset with a glass of wine, even sitting on the low walls along the water and drinking your wine and watching the sun go down. One of the things I love about living in Italy is that there are no open container laws. So again, an excellent reason to go. The next day, we're going to get up and see an incredible archaeological site. We're going to explore the Valley of the Temples, again with a local expert. That's our friend Michele. The Valley of the Temples is in a town called Agrigento, and that was one of the most wealthy and powerful of the Greek city-states. They were so wealthy that in the 5th century BC, they were able to build, with Carthaginian slave labor, 15 temples that made a ring around the city. And so a few of them are left on this ridge in between a couple of valleys. So we'll have quite a bit of time to explore these with our local guide, Michele. And then that night, you're on the island. We spend a lot of time on the coast. Why wouldn't you go out for a fish meal?
Fish is the most important kind of food we have in Sicily. I mean, if you ask me, Tommaso, how many days in 1 month you eat fish? Well, as a Sicilian, I would say 26 days in 1 month we eat fish, okay? 3 days we eat meat, veal or whatever. 1 day probably we eat chicken, okay? So if you come to Sicily and you're asking for chicken, well, forget about that. Actually, I tell you something, chicken in Sicily is considered the food for poor people, all right? So fish is absolutely important for our Mediterranean diet.
Our next amazing site on this tour is Piazza Armerina, and this is another villa that belonged to an important Roman, and in the 1950s, they discovered all of the floors were covered with these 3rd century Roman mosaics. So we get to go there, and they've created a system of walkways in the villa so that we can walk on these walkways and look down at what is basically a photo album of the ancient Romans, because all of these are depicting scenes of daily life. I think what you're looking at up there are Roman soldiers who are hunting and capturing all of the animals that were needed for the games at the Colosseums that were scattered all over the empire. The most famous of the mosaics here are the Bikini Girls. Anybody familiar with the Bikini Girls? These were discovered in the 1950s in a very conservative Sicily, and this became the face of the archaeological site. So it caused a huge scandal to have these scantily clad bikini girls out there. They're actually athletes, and they're there receiving their prizes after having participated in some games. Now, if you're doing the off-season itinerary, we stop for 2 nights in Ragusa. This is just the off-season itinerary, and Ragusa is in the southeastern corner of the island, and it is one of 8 towns that are on a UNESCO World Heritage Site for their harmonious Sicilian Baroque architecture.
Yes, it's very theatrical. It's very, very nice. I mean, when you see a church like this, and the dome of the church is really impressive. And actually, Ragusa is becoming more and more popular among visitors because I don't know if you know the movie Inspector Montalbano. This was the set where this important movie was filmed. So, especially in the northern part of Europe, every year we have thousands and thousands of people that they want to see the set of the Inspector Montalbano. They come for a day. I mean, they take the flight from London, they fly down to Sicily, they visit Sicily, and then they go back just to see the Inspector Montalbano set.
That has something to do with the fact that it's based on a series of books which have been translated into English, and it's been made into a television series, and the television series stars a Roman actor who's not bad on the eyes, so that's why a lot of people like to come down there. Why all this harmonious Sicilian Baroque architecture in this corner of the island? In the 17th century, there was a terrible earthquake that destroyed all of these towns, and a few architects were called in, and they rebuilt in the new, most innovative style of the time. We stay in the old town of Ragusa Ibla, which is built on this limestone outcrop surrounded by 2 valleys. So another thing that a lot of people like to do in their free time as Ragusa is walk up to the new town and look out over the old town. We like to do a cooking lesson here. This is the only time I've ever seen Tommaso in the kitchen. Because Tommaso has a mama who normally does everything for him. But if he's your guide in Sicily, then he will be helping you to make these.
These are called arancini, like an orange, and they're stuffed fried rice balls. But this is quite an old recipe, which is maybe 1,000-year-old. And it's not the same thing that the Romans have, and they call supplì. It's a completely different thing. These are much, much better, and they're much larger, literally the size of a whole orange.
Because those were made by Tommaso, of course. Huh? But if they were made by Mama, they would be even better, you know? I'm at those kind of Mama's boys, and then when Mama's made this, believe me, that's absolutely delicious, though.
We're going to make one stop here at the oldest chocolate factory on the island in the town of Modica. This is the Bonaiuto Chocolate Factory. Obviously, we're going to taste the chocolates. How can you go in there without tasting them? These chocolates are really interesting, though, because it's not the kind of chocolate you're probably used to.
Yes, this is a way of working the cocoa that was brought in by the Spaniards in the 1500s, and they saw that the way the Aztec used to work the chocolate, and they brought their know-how down to Sicily, because this was under Spanish domination, the southern part of Italy, and so you can feel the grain of sugars. It's just the consistency of the chocolate that's quite different than what you're used to taste.
And then we're going to go off to Syracuse. And Syracuse is our home for the next 2 nights. What you're looking at there is the charming island of Ortigia. It's quail-shaped and attached to the mainland by 2 bridges. And this is where the Greek colonists originally founded the city almost 3,000 years ago. Syracuse grew in power and wealth and rivaled even Athens, the mother colony. It was the most important and powerful Greek city-state in Magna Graecia, in Greater Greece. And if you're familiar with the Roman orator Cicero, he is the one who defined this city as the greatest and most beautiful of them all. And I would say that the old town of Ortigia is still one of the most charming places that we go on this tour. This is the main square with the Duomo. We spend some time exploring that. Sometimes we go off to the Greek theater as well. But again, food is such a part of your experience on the island that we walk through the market together and we meet our friends Gaetano and Andrea, and sometimes we have these fantastic sandwiches made for us. And then, what's a visit to Sicily without a poopy show? Tell us about the poopies. I love going to the show.
Those are specifically, as you said, Sicilian pupi, P-U-P-I. It's not a puppet, it's not a marionette. It has, as you can see, an iron a helmet, but it has a string, and they represent the battle between the Christians and the Saracens. So Charlemagne and his knights fighting the bad guys, which in this case are the Saracens. And it was a way to educate the population. And one in the middle is my favorite character. She's one of the very few female characters, Angelica, and she is trouble.
Because you see, the knights are supposed to be out fighting, but they're always actually just in search of Angelica. So they're always just actually fighting over the hand of Angelica. After that, we go over to Catania. We spend 1 night in Catania, and we don't talk just about ancient history on our tours. We also talk about modern events and more modern historical events. And so we make a stop at the Museo dello Sbarco. So that's the Museum of the Allied Historical Landing during World War II, if you're familiar with Operation Husky. So we have a chance to talk about that. Then we go into Catania. We see the main square with its very elegant cathedral. Have a wander through this fantastically vibrant fish market. It's the most vibrant fish market on the island and has the most variety of fish available to you. Just be careful when you're walking through, because the vendors are not only calling out their wares and trying to get you to buy the fish, but they might be throwing some shrimp or oysters into your mouth as you're walking by. So it's best to keep your mouth shut when you're walking. And then if you are on the summer itinerary, instead of Ragusa, you will be spending 2 nights in Taormina. And Taormina is very close to Tommaso's heart.
Of course, this is my hometown. This is the place where I live. It's really an incredible town. Actually, from a touristical point of view, this was discovered in the 1800s, in the Grand Tour of Europe. So when all the Northern European in winter escaped from the cold weather, they came to Taormina when they found this wonderful, wonderful weather. And this is actually the Greek Roman Theater, which is the second largest of Sicily. And on the background, we have the highest and the most active volcano of Europe, Mount Etna, 11,000 feet of volcano there.
You might want to have what Sicilians normally like to have for breakfast after you've spent some time wandering around Taormina, maybe gone down to the beach for a bit. That is a brioche con gelato. We like to go up to the slopes of Mount Etna and spend some time learning about Sicilian wines with our friends at the Benanti Winery. And then if you decide to travel with Rick Steves, this is probably what you're going to look like at the end. A very happy traveler who shared an incredibly intense experience for 10 or 15 days. We absolutely are thrilled to offer Sicily and the south of Italy to travelers, and we hope to see you there sometime this year. Just a reminder, if you have any specific questions about these itineraries, we are going right to the lobby of this building afterwards, and we'll have other guides there as well, so you can ask us questions. Thank you very much for coming out.